Hello, everybody, and welcome to my review of Marvel's Inhumans, the IMAX presentation they gave. My name is Connor. If you're new to my channel, I have not recorded anything in over a year. This is all new content on my channel anyways. So Marvel's Inhumans is the third television series that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is doing on ABC. The first one was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and then they did Agent Carter, which ran for 2 seasons. In the mid-season break during Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. seasons 2 and 3, and that got canceled after its second season, and now we are getting Inhumans. And if you are familiar with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., then Inhumans has been playing a relatively large role in that series since season 2. So it's been several years. This has been a long time coming. It's actually been a rather interesting production history as well. I won't get all into that, but it was going to be a movie, and then there was this big falling out between Ike Perlmutter, the CEO of Marvel, and Kevin Feige, who does Marvel Studios films. He reports directly to Bob Iger at Disney and no longer to Ike Perlmutter. And I guess Ike Perlmutter was really pushing Inhumans. Kevin Feige, I guess, didn't want to do it. A bunch of odds and ends later, we got Inhumans. Another interesting thing about the production of this was we have showrunner Scott Buck. And Scott Buck has done another Marvel show. You see, as I'm sure most people know, outside of ABC television shows, Disney and ABC Studios have a partnership, Marvel, I should say, has a partnership with Netflix to have certain shows streaming. They had Daredevil, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist, and then just last month they had a big crossover in The Defenders where they crossed over those 4 characters, and it was basically the Netflix street-level, gritty, R-rated Avengers, I guess. I was not a big fan of The Defenders. Love Jessica Jones. Thought Daredevil was really good. Luke Cage was cool. But Iron Fist sucked. And I would say it is the worst thing to come out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, period, whether it's the film or the television series. And its showrunner was Scott Buck, who is the showrunner of Inhumans. So that was an initial red flag. And on top of that, we got the costumes that we saw coming out of Entertainment Weekly or wherever it was, and that did not look too good to me. It looked a lot like one of those lower tier, like CW shows we would have done in the early 2000s. That was a eye raise. Whoa, whoa, whoa! Black Bolt doesn't have a tuning fork. He doesn't have a mask. What's going on? Why can't you do that? This is post Guardians of the Galaxy. This is post Doctor Strange. We can do whatever. People will just go along with it. We can just do it, and it's okay. So that was just an initial red flag. But you know what? It's just a costume. The trailers weren't very good, but whatever. I'm used to trailers being bad, or at least me not responding to trailers. So I was going in with hope that was maybe blind, because I do like the Inhumans. I think I'm one of like 5 people on the planet of Earth that do like the Inhumans. I don't like that in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and in recent years, in terms of the Marvel Comics, we're trying to make the Inhumans the X-Men, essentially, and they're not. The Inhumans are a secret race of special powered beings that grow up and live in secret, and that's the whole thing. Is they're a secret society of people that just want to be away from humans. And it's interesting. They started in the pages of Fantastic Four, and then they had a series of backup features in Thor. And they were written by Stan Lee with art by Jack Kirby. And I would say it's probably the wackiest, crazy, out there Marvel stuff that Jack Kirby ever did. I'm not exactly a big Marvel guy in terms of comics, and in terms of DC, I mean, the Fourth World and Kamandi and all that mega crazy stuff that Jack Kirby did over at DC after he left Marvel probably got a little bit crazier. But I see the Inhumans almost as a precursor to that. And I like these wacky characters. I mean, look at Black Bolt. I mean, look at that. He's got these crazy wings. He's got lightning bolts on his thing. He's got this tuning fork. He's got a mask. he's cool. I like him a lot, and he's the king, and he can't speak, and so he has to have power in his presence. And I think that's a really neat idea for a character, and the idea of your voice shattering. It's just a strong voice. Yeah, that's really cool to me. And then you got Medusa. She has hair powers. You have Karnak, who is a super intelligence, and you have Crystal and Gorgon and Triton. They're great, right? I think they're great. No one else seems to like them though. So, oh well. But now it finally came, and what's interesting about Inhumans is that it is filmed, at least these first two. I know for a fact that these first two episodes, I don't know about the entire series, but the first two episodes were filmed with IMAX cameras, and they are being released in theaters, in IMAX theaters exclusively, for a full 2 weeks before it makes its television premiere. I want to say on the 29th of September. As of my recording of this, it is September 2nd. It started yesterday on the 1st. So I'll stop beating around the bush. What did I think of Inhumans? Well, you know, it's got some pretty bad buzz going on. Not a lot of people are excited for it. Not a lot of people like Inhumans, and the critics weren't too keen on it. But, you know, I've liked stuff that most people don't like, and I gotta say, I didn't like this. It was pretty bad. I have this absurd glass for water. I'm probably going to need it. I might be here for a little while. So I took some notes, and I'm just going to go down these and break apart what I don't like about Inhumans. I'm just going to first talk about the characters, then I'm going to go into the production, and then I'm going to go into the actual story. So let's talk about the characters. We have Black Bolt, played by Anson Mount, and his wife is Medusa, played by Serinda Swan. This is where it gets weird because nothing. I'm tempted to say nothing about this works, and a lot of it is the story and the production and everything working against quality. It feels, and I don't say that lightly. I'm not just saying that to pile on. I walked into this with some sense of now false hope, and yeesh, there were moments of this that shocked me at how amateur they looked. We have Maximus, played by Ewan Ryan, some guy from Game of Thrones. We have Gorgon, played by Ian Iquaker, Karnak, played by Ken Lung. I've seen he's a character actor who's been around for some time, mostly in television. And then there's Crystal, played by Isabel Cornish. I'm going to talk about the actors right now. Just kind of cast a wide net over this. They range from I don't know if they're good at acting to yeah, they're not really good at acting. All of this could be remedied by me seeing anything else these people are in. I don't know if these people are good actors because I feel like they have nothing to work with and they are given no direction. I'm going to quickly talk about Anson Mount as Black Bolt. It is a tricky role, I could imagine, to play a character who does not speak. You need to have a strong physical presence. It doesn't mean you have to be jacked and ripped. You need to show up into a room and evoke strength and have people and have me believe that people would follow you. You know, you're the king. And he just seems like a guy. But on a performance level, it's more than just that. It's more than just showing up and being the king. There's a lot of subtle nuances. There's a lot of nuances you just have to do when you are doing a performance like this. Most of which is in your face, and I understand why they didn't opt to go with the Black Bolt mask, because the Black Bolt mask covers up pretty much everything that isn't your nose and your mouth, and you have little holes for your eyes, but you need to have a pretty tight squeezed mask for your brow to furrow and to get all of those subtle nuances that you get from the other parts of your face. So I get why they didn't opt to go for a mask. I'll get to the tuning fork later. I don't get why they didn't do a tuning fork, but that. All that being said, I don't like what we get with Black Bolt here. Uh, I feel like Anson Mount got the script and then a day later had to perform these scenes. It really reads that way. Or, sorry, it doesn't read that way. It feels that way. It watches that way. I'm not sure what the direction was like. It feels like there isn't a direction in a lot of these scenes. It's like somebody said action and cut, and then they just sort of made it up as they went along mostly. He does a lot of googly eyes in this, where his character needs to be confused and he needs to show confusion, but he can't talk or evoke any sound of any kind. So he goes, it's ridiculous. More so, we have Serinda Swan as Medusa. This might be a good actress. I don't know. And I should say Anson Mount was in the show Hell on Wheels on AMC, which I never saw. I hear it's a good show. And I guess he must be good in it because he's the main character in sketch. I don't know, but I've never heard of the actress Serinda Swan. She has, I would say, the most going against her. Her costume. She has a horrible wig, and her dress that she wears looks like cosplay. And on top of that, when her hair powers have to start working, they turn to CG. And the way the camera moves, it doesn't do her any service, especially in the action scenes. And her costume is trying to show off her figure, and it doesn't do her any service in trying to make her seem as a strong-willed woman in that regard either. Um, I don't buy their chemistry either. She just sort of has to be the strong voice because Black Bolt can't talk, so she has to speak with the authority that he doesn't have in his voice. And the weakest stuff here is the line readings, and most of it does come down to editing, which I'll get into editing a little bit later. But for a lot of these conversations, it feels like we have one person in a close-up, and then they will say their line, and then it will cut, and then we will go to the other person, and they will say their line, and it will cut, and then it will go to a close-up of the first person again, and they will talk, and it will cut. And it's not like the usual reverse shot where it's over the shoulder. You get a sense that, okay, you see the side of somebody's face, where, okay, we're in a tight quartered place. These people are talking to one another. It is just person's face cut. And the way these lines are delivered is each line is delivered with a sense of finality to it, where it feels like somebody makes a statement, and then another person makes a statement, and then the other person makes another statement. There's not a lot of flow to these. It does feel amateur in that way, where geez, when I was in middle school and high school, I made short films where it was, okay, now you say this, and somebody will say, I'm getting Cheetos. Okay, now you say this, I want the flaming hot Cheetos. And then you say, okay. And so the way it works out is, I'm getting Cheetos, I want flaming hot Cheetos. Okay. It doesn't have a rhythm to it. There's not a lot of flow. It feels like these actors aren't in the same room is what I'm trying to get at a lot of the time. So to that point, I'm going to go and talk about Maximus, Maximus the Mad, as he's called in the comics, who is the human brother of Black Bolt. He does not possess any inhuman powers, and he's a conniving Cassius type, if you're familiar with Julius Caesar. The problem with this character, especially, and this is where I think the acting starts to seep in, this actor seems like he has an accent of sorts. I don't know if this character is supposed to have an accent. I just don't know. That's just down to this is, again, it feels like people got these scripts the day before they were to shoot, and they just had to show up and try something because his accent ebbs and flows, and I don't know if this character is supposed to have an accent or not, or if this actor just isn't that good at speaking with an American accent. This character has to give these big speeches, and he has two of them in these 2 episodes. They fall with a thud because he doesn't have that presence that revolutionary charisma. He doesn't possess that. I have not seen him in Game of Thrones, but I remember when this actor was cast, a lot of people were saying, "Well, that's really good casting." Uh, I don't know if I'd see this guy in anything else. Again, it could just be bad direction and the material's bad, but again, in his presence when he's delivering these lines, it's just not there. But the weird twist in that is when he's in scenes with other people, he's the one who rises to the top. For the first several scenes, he has to interact with others, and he's does a decent job of playing off of other people in dialogue. This was his was the only character where I saw he had a rapport with other actors. And so when he has to do his own thing and choose some scenery, it feels like he doesn't have another actor to play off of in terms of dialogue, and that's where things start to fall. And that's a bummer because that's arguably one of the more important things regarding the character. He's a conniver and he's a revolutionary, and one of those is failing. The other people, we have Gorgon, Karnak. Gorgon and Karnak, I think they're fine. Ken Lung, he was on Lost. He was in X-Men: The Last Stand. He's a decent actor, and he plays Karnak. And he isn't doing his usual kind of restrained, reserved type. He isn't doing that. He's doing more of a human computer where he's all intellect and no sense of uh, uh, emotional intelligence, so to speak. And I thought his performance was fine. Again, the material and direction aren't doing him any favors, but he was fine, as was Gorgon. The fellow who plays Gorgon had a lot of charisma. He seemed like he was doing a riff on Dennis Haysbert or Idris Elba, but I thought he was fine. He was the only one who really seemed to have natural, likable charisma out of any of these characters, and he wasn't on screen a whole lot. So take that if you will. And then there's Crystal, played by Isabel Cornish, who is the younger sister of Abby Cornish. Okay, this was the character where the editing really started to notice. All of her lines, when it's a close-up, when you're seeing her face talk, I started to notice after a certain point, all of her lines, it was a new shot, and then she said her line, and then it cut, and then it cut to the other person, and the scene would go on. Then it would just cut back to her to say her lines. It feels like she isn't in the same room as these people a lot of the time. And when we do have a medium or a wide shot where we do have multiple characters and she has a line, it sounds like it is ADR into the scene. It sounds like it is other audio layered on top of the scene. It's very strange, and it's this character specifically where I noticed it. It was very strange. And her line readings are not good. It is bratty younger sister and a slightly irresponsible younger sister. I don't want to do an impression of it. It's awkward. She is the character where it most felt like new shot, say your line, and then we'll go to the other person. And like so Serinda Swan, when she has to speak with authority, it does feel like the actress is putting on a voice where she'll sit there. She will stand while somebody talks, and then when she has to talk, she gets all animated, and it feels like she's overacting. I think the actress is trying something. It does feel it is too big for this material. I can't believe I'm saying the acting, it feels too big and over the top for Inhumans. This should be the most flamboyant, over the top thing that Marvel's produced. It should relish in this. But when Serinda Swan does, it does feel like you're taken out of the moment. Like a lot of people feel Karen Gillan as Nebula in the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. So in terms of Crystal, she's doing a similar thing as Serinda Swan, where when she talks, she just kind of bursts out into it and just starts. It feels like she just starts yelling at the characters. And unlike Serinda Swan, Isabel Cornish, it feels like an unpolished actor who doesn't have a lot of experience. So those are my rundown of the main characters. As an ensemble, they don't make for a particularly good ensemble. Medusa's the standout in terms of she does have an authoritative presence that is fine. Maximus plays off of other characters fine, and Crystal is entirely disposable, and I don't think the actress is very good. But Black Bolt, Gorgon, Karnak, we get a little bit of Triton at the beginning. He's effectively not in this. They're all boring. We have a couple of other Inhuman characters around. They're also boring. They seem to just stand there and posture and talk about the environment and politics of the situation in which they're in, which I'll get to. But as an ensemble, I don't particularly care for this ensemble. And I find that the actors don't have a whole lot of chemistry between one another. And mostly due to the direction and writing, which I will get to, they feel lost. All right, let's get into the production. I'm going to talk about this direction and cinematography. Uh, so the direction here is not good. It feels like The Guiding Light or General Hospital or any number of other soap operas, which in theory sounds fine, right? It's Inhumans. It should be this heightened dramatic soap opera. And but the way the direction feels like they're trying to play this as restrained and very serious, but the trappings are not. So when I say soap opera here, I mean cheap. It looks cheap. And I think a lot of that can really go into what the cinematography is doing, because it comes down to the IMAX. It was not a good idea to put this out into IMAX theaters at all. That is maybe the biggest mistake I see here. The huge screen, I don't know why they did it with these cameras, but seeing this in the theater highlighted so many problems with the production. This is probably going to take up a majority of this video, is just me talking about how bad the production is. Okay, so let me just talk about the sets. There are a lot of them. That's where I think most of the money went to, is these sets, because there are a lot of them. That being said, each individual set, it don't look very good. They're usually small. They usually feel like if the camera pulls out any further, you're going to see a studio light or a catering table in the background. It does not look good. They are small. They are somewhat claustrophobic. So many of them look the same. I kept thinking we were going back to the same rooms, and we weren't. And I don't think that the on-location shooting is particularly effective. I also think it's where, when I say sets, this is also where I'm talking about, is on-location shooting, where I think so much of the money went. They went and shot in Hawaii. From what I hear, it's somewhat cheaper to shoot in Hawaii. I don't know. I think it might be. I would think it'd be more expensive. But we get some scenic vistas. I think it's. I don't even know the name of the island that they're on. But you see some nice craters, some nice shots of some mountains. It looks fine. It's nothing that you haven't seen before on any other television that's shot on location. You could watch Hawaii Five-0 and pretty much get the same effect in terms of scale. There's nothing about the IMAX frame that adds to the dimension of this experience. In fact, the IMAX frame is a full 16:9, which is probably the aspect ratio in which you are watching this video on, in which you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on, in which you watch the other Marvel Netflix shows on. So if you're going to use IMAX and use basically the same size canvas, except now it's going to be in theater, so it's going to be even bigger, you need to know how to use that IMAX frame. I went and I saw Dunkirk last month, or I guess in July, so a couple months ago. And it filled up that entire IMAX frame. But it looked excellent because Christopher Nolan knows how to layer an IMAX shot, even when it is mediums shots and close-ups. There is a depth of field that can be seen behind the characters. There is professional color grading. There is so much that goes into a real IMAX experience like Dunkirk. This feels like it's saying IMAX, putting it in theaters for a quick buck. It really, really feels that way. Because once we get to the special effects, they look even less good. So, one more note about the direction. It's so standard television. From what I heard, the director of both of these episodes are directed by the same guy. And from my knowledge, the director said he thinks he was hired because of his experience to shoot fast and cheap. Like that's his expertise. Is, I can do something really quickly and I can do it for cheap. It shows. That's where a lot of this poor line delivery and I'll get into the action a little bit, where the bad action comes into. But just in the dialogue scenes, there's no distinct visual flair. There's nothing special in the images you're presenting. And you think, oh, Connor, but it's just a television show. You're just supposed to be entertained. No, I'm going to see this in a theater. I didn't pay for this. I have a brother who works for a theater chain, so we were able to see this at a local IMAX theater. But I would be surprised for the people who paid top dollar. I don't know how much they are charging for this. I hope it isn't much because it's only an hour and 10 minutes long, and I'd be shocked to find out if they were charging full IMAX for each of these tickets. But if I'm going to see this huge canvas that you're showing me, you need to bring it. You need to show me something visually distinctive, something that wows me. It's only an hour and 10 minutes. I want my money's worth. But I didn't pay for it, so. So let's talk about the action. It isn't good. This comes from showrunner Scott Buck, as I said, who gave us Iron Fist. And Iron Fist is pretty much notorious at this point for its poor action scenes. I didn't find a lot of the action scenes to be notably bad in Iron Fist. I think for a martial arts show, it's embarrassing. But just in terms of general fight scenes in television shows, you could do worse. This time around, they didn't have the choreography that Iron Fist had. So if you hated the Iron Fist action scenes, that should send a red flag up your wall, because there is that staginess and that slowness when it comes to the action scenes here that was present in Iron Fist, only it's more stagey and more slow. There is an action scene with Karnak which tries to do something, and then it has a quick idea, and all of a sudden the action scene isn't what you thought it was, and then you basically see it again but with a different outcome. When that first time it was happening, I was sitting next to my brother. He started laughing, where it was so awkwardly staged, where the actor didn't seem to know what his choreography was, like an hour before they started shooting. And there's this, and the camera's trying to move around the limitation, so there's this awkward closeness and staginess to it, and there's a slowness to it where the actors you can practically see it in their eyes that they're trying to figure it out while it's happening. And you could argue that's the character, and I'd get your argument, but in terms of an action scene, it's supposed to play naturally, and it doesn't. On top of that, we have a lot of slow motion in the action scenes. The slow motion here, I think it is trying to cover up those limitations. I'm going to go into spoilers. Oh, I should probably say, I'm going to go into spoilers for these two episodes. I don't think anybody cares. But if for whatever reason, if you can't deal with spoilers for the first two episodes of Marvel's Inhumans, don't watch this beyond this point. But at the end of these two parts, there is an action scene between Medusa and some chick who works for Maximus. It was horribly awkward because what happens is they start coming at each other and it slows down and it's trying to do slow-mo. I think this is where they're trying to have a style, but the style is second on their mind. What's first on their mind is trying to cover up their limitations. Oh, this probably won't look good. Let's slow it down. So when they slow this footage down, it only highlights the awkwardness some more. They start going at each other, and instead of going into a move that you think would follow naturally into the dance of this action scene, they kind of change their momentum, and all of a sudden, oh, I'm watching this part of the action scene now. It was going to go into this move, and it starts that way, but it kind of goes there. It feels like kids on a playground play fighting, trying to be unpredictable to the other one. It's very graceless. There's not a lot of uh, dance to this action scene, and I think that's what they're trying to go for. I'm so curious what they're trying to do here. I don't know if this is supposed to be a heightened big soap opera. A lot of the production trappings feel that way, but the feel of the story and tone of the direction tell me otherwise. I don't know if this is supposed to be flamboyantly over the top, Inhumans, dun, 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 or if it's trying to be self-serious, Inhumans. I'm getting mixed signals. We got the weak action. The opening action scene in particular is the key word. The operative word here is awkward. It is Triton running through the woods, and I guess this is where they blew their budget. There's some explosives that kind of go off around him, but it's so far away you don't feel the immediate danger this character's in. I could go on for a long time about these action scenes, but I figure I'll just start repeating myself. You start to get the point, and they get repetitive after a while. So I'm going to get into the stilted acting a little bit more. Um, I already talked about this, but another thing that ain't helping here is the dialogue. The dialogue in and of itself is bad. So when it is awkwardly edited with some stilted line delivery, this is where things start to fall apart entirely, because most of this I'm going to call it an IMAX experience. Most of this experience is dialogue driven, and so much of it is bad dialogue. The first time we meet Black Bolt and Medusa is they are in bed getting it on, in which Scott Buck attempts to top the awkwardness of the Iron Fist sex scene with the Medusa Black Bolt sex scene. This is our introduction to these characters. And we have weird dialogue that I don't feel like people sharing this kind of intimate moment would have, where Medusa's saying, "Oh, Black Bolt, don't you remember a time when we weren't the king and queen?" Did you get that, audience? We're the king and queen. I don't either, Black Bolt. Get it? They've been king and queen for a long time. It almost seems like they're arrogant about their power. But then they're all of a sudden closed and they go back. Then there is a scene in which Terragenesis starts happening. I'm going to get to this Terragenesis scene in a little bit. But, okay, so here's just a personal pet peeve I have when it comes to certain scenes in television and movies. It is where somebody is giving a professional presentation, and somebody in our characters in the audience talk through it. In the film The Gallows, you probably never seen it. If you haven't even seen it, you probably haven't even heard of it. But it was a horror film in 2015. It's a found footage, shaky cam horror movie, and the opening scene is at a high school production of a play, and it is somebody shooting it, and it's basically the backstory for the urban legend that comes out of this. And the whole time, the characters who are filming this stage play are just talking about backstory, about oh yes, this character was the understudy, but then and I'm thinking, what are you doing? You guys are there to film the play, but you're talking the whole time, and it pops up in all this, and it drives me crazy. Because this is the Inhumans. It is a part of their culture. It is a part of their society where people undergo Terragenesis. This is basically a religious experience. I don't think there's weddings where the groomsmen are just talking casually during a wedding ceremony. It's inappropriate and it's stupid, but we have a Terrigenesis scene where we are showing you what Terrigenesis on Adelon looks like, and the whole time, Karnak and Gorgon, I believe, are talking, and Karnak is like, I do not believe, I do not understand why Terrigenesis is seen as this big religious thing. It is just an equation, blah, blah, blah. It is science, blah, blah, blah. Do you get it, audience? This is where we're establishing their ideology and their positions on Terrigenesis. To which I think Maximus or Karnak or sorry, Gorgon or somebody say, "Oh, I don't know. It is something special in our society." It is such ham-fisted, on-the-nose dialogue. Can't we just see it? It's happening in the scene, in this really small broom closet set. It's happening, okay? Can we just see it happen? Show, don't tell. I am the audience. I can tell what's happening. I'm smart enough to tell what's happening. And then I already talked about the Maximus speeches. The speeches in and of themselves just aren't good. So more on the production stuff here is the bad special effects. Lockjaw looks terrible. That makes me sad. Who doesn't love Lockjaw? He's a giant teleporting dog. He doesn't even look like he's part of this. He doesn't even look like he's color graded to the right shade in the environments. It's embarrassing. Why did you put this in theaters? He looks terrible. Now, okay. He looks fine if he were in an animated movie. If he were in a hyper detailed Pixar short, he would look fine. In a live action film, essentially, that people are going to the theaters to watch for 2 weeks before it shows on television, it looks embarrassing. He doesn't look like he possesses any weight. He doesn't look like he's on the same plane of existence as these other characters. It's embarrassing. So that's the big one. There are also a lot of CG shots of Adelon and the moon and green screen effects. They look pretty standard television. They don't look particularly egregious, but when you are going to the theater to watch this, it still looks bad. And then there's Medusa's hair. So the Medusa's hair is already a bad wig, but when it turns into CG hair fighting, I thought I could practically see the whole, like, you could see the special effect turn on. It was strange. I don't even know how much more I can really talk about this. The special effects were just really bad. When people have to use their powers and it's around their hands, it looks like I see stuff on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that looks better than this. And this is the one where they're saving their money, or they're spending some money. They're saving their episode order to spend more money on this. This doesn't feel like an event. This feels like something they'd put on ABC.com, like a web television series. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk about the story. I don't like the story at all. So the biggest primary problem with the story, I do not understand the societal structure of Adelon. I do not understand this. Okay, so we have Terrigenesis, where people, when they become a certain age, and humans that are born here in Adelon, they need to undergo Terrigenesis to see if they have Inhuman powers. If they do, that's awesome. You're an Inhuman. If you don't, then you're a human and you suck and you need to go work in the spice mines or the mines or wherever. You need to go basically be a coal miner. Okay, fine. That's your idea. That's your conceit. That's your idea. Cool. The problem is, towards the end of the second episode, we do go down to the mines, and there's a dude with pretty big Inhuman claws. doing the mining. So I'm thinking, why is he here? What's he doing? Seems to be like a lower tier of Inhumans, but we don't talk about that. We only talk about the people who work in the mines as if they are the humans that were so humans born on Adelon that were not gifted with the correct genetics. So I don't understand how that part of this society works. But moving on to Black Bolt, he is the person who is in charge of everything, and he seems to have, oh, he's the king. The concerns of the people aren't his concerns. But this whole thing doesn't makes him significantly less likable with this bizarre hatred of humans. I know in the comics, Inhumans do not like humans because of prejudice or fear of persecution or something. It's been a while. But we don't ever talk about that here. We have a brief offhand comment about humans will destroy. That is their instinct. But what about humans born in Adelon? Why send them down to the spice mines or coal mines or whatever? Why do that? Won't that just make them angrier? Aren't you just priming them for a revolution? Are you just expecting them to say, yep, it is my role to just lie down here and mine for the rest of my life? I don't get this. And the reason I'm talking so much about this is because this is the population that Maximus goes to start a revolution, and I don't understand their plight. I don't sympathize with them. I'm more confused by their situation than I am intrigued by their uprising. So because of this, the coup plot has no weight. We don't ever see Black Bolt on the throne, so when Maximus usurps the throne, I don't feel anything. On top of that, the coup just sort of happens. It comes out of nowhere, like, a coup would. But here's how you do a coup plot. I thought everyone knew how to do this. What you do is you have these people, they're in a situation, they are focused on this one mission, and they are making steps towards that, and then, oh my god, a coup happens. Whoa, we were blindsided. We were too focused on one thing to see this coup happening, and it just sort of takes over us. Also, worst coup ever, why don't you start with Medusa and Black Bolt? Why do you start with Karnak and Gorgon, who can, I don't know, alert Crystal and Medusa and Black Bolt and everyone else? I don't get that. But furthermore, the coup, when it gets struck, it doesn't seem like Maximus has become the 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 the, the man who fights for those who have to be in the mines. He has a brief thing of, oh no 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 no, everyone's great. He has a brief thing where he gives a motivational speech, but that hardly feels like they're on his side over the king's side. And for that matter, nobody in Adelon really feels like they have any sort of opinion one way or the other. I'm really confused. Adelon doesn't feel like it has any scale. It feels like maybe 20 people live here, and sometimes they'll gather in crowds and listen to somebody talk. So because of this, if I were writing this, and I'm not trying to, I would start with Adelon and the societal structure. And honestly, I wouldn't meet the royal family until part 2. That's something my brother said walking out, and I completely agree with him. We shouldn't have met the royal family until part 2, or at least we should have had Maximus show up halfway through part 1 to provide some kind of motivation and have us see the lower class people look up to Maximus as a figure, but we don't. And that way, so we have this idea of, wow, whoever is the ruler here kind of sucks. And then we meet the ruler, and then we get to understand Black Bolt's position. But that being said, I don't understand Black Bolt's position and why he's so the way he is. We don't really get to know these people before the coup really starts happening. Afterwards, like, geez, Black Bolt's kind of unlikable because he's just letting all these people live in horrible conditions without really caring. He's kind of a jerk, isn't he? But as is, Triton goes down to recruit an Inhuman who is Kate Yeager's daughter from Transformers 4. And he says, I'm an Inhuman. This is another great piece of dialogue here. We are called Inhumans. There is another place where I can take you. Oh, really? Yes, let me take you there. They are not after you. They are. It's so on the nose expository. We can write better than this, right, guys? So Black Bolt sent Triton down to get this one Inhuman, and then it goes south. He didn't tell anybody else in the royal family about his mission to Triton. And people in the royal family are a little peeved by this, but their overall understanding. No one else really knows about this. But for whatever reason, they're focused on getting Triton back, even though they think he's most likely dead. Okay. In order for the coup to be a blindside, we need more than just, oh man, Triton might be dead because he sent him on a mission and didn't tell anybody. We need to have a lot on the king's plate. And it doesn't really feel like there are. It seems like, oh, the humans might find us. All right, we won't do anything right now. And they're all kind of some of them are upset, like, no, we actually kind of got to do something. But I think the idea is that all this stuff is supposed to be piling up for Black Bolt, but we don't really get a sense of what all these obstacles are for Black Bolt before the coup starts happening. The whole coup plot, which is most of the first episode, falls apart entirely because I don't care. And as a result, throughout most of this entire thing, I was mostly bored the whole time. None of the comedy here worked. I don't find any of the dialogue funny. And the other dialogue's bad. And the action scenes are dull. And it even at 110 minutes, I actually started to check my watch at one point thinking, man, when is this going to be over? I thought it was an hour and a half, and it wasn't. So I'm mostly done here. A couple more things. So the musical score I do not like. It feels like they wrote this musical score before they actually filmed anything. It is this generic fanfare. Bum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, bum, 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 bum. It doesn't fit with the self-serious Inhuman thing. This music does feel more like it's the Inhumans, and the makeup effects certainly feel like something like a fan film for a Star Trek original series thing, where Triton doesn't look like a fish man. He looks like a Star Trek alien from the Next Generation. That's what he looks like. Gorgon's got hooves, and they look like a normal person with hoof extensions on their feet. But when we have that music playing and we have all these trappings where they're in costumes that look relatively cheap and makeup that looks relatively cheap, it almost comes across as a B movie, but way too self-serious to kind of be charming and amusing and funny. It's this bizarre oddity. And this big fanfare that starts playing, it does play up that more adventure serial, high sci-fi wackiness that this story just is not. And plus, it's played at all the wrong times. There's a moment where Karnak is looking out of what I'm going to assume is a window. We don't see what he's looking at. We just sort of move past something that he might be looking out of. Again, the sets here suck. If the camera turned around to see what he was looking at, it would probably be a catering table. But the scene ends on a somewhat ominous tone. But the music is dun 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 dun. Am I supposed to be excited by this? Why? This is an ominous ending. Shouldn't it end with a bomb? And then there was a lot of stings. There's a scene between Maximus and Medusa where Medusa says something and the big BOOM sting happens. And yeah, it's a bit of a jab at him, but I don't need the music to be that obvious to me. And on top of that, we have some pop songs playing. This is where it really felt like I was watching a television show as opposed to an IMAX event, which is what they were billing this as. We get a cover of one song that I don't remember what it is, and then we get a cover of Paint It Black back to back, where it's the same thing. The music comes in, it's a cover, and it's slow and melodic, and but it kind of has like a slow hard rock thing going on, where the verses start and the singer is kind of quiet but still intense, and then there will be this pause and then the characters will say something right before the big power, and then they'll do their power, and then the chorus will kick in, and then we do that again like immediately after with Paint It Black. It's almost like, why don't you just make it one song, have them do the chorus, and then when we go to the next person to do their power thing, we quiet back down to the verses, have a pause, go back. I mean, it's weird. It's like a dated television trope at this point, but doing it with two different songs back to back is stupid. And on top of that, we also have "Don't Bring Me Down" by ELO. It's not a cover; it's an actual song. Black Bolt walks into a men's store to buy a suit, and then it starts off as diegetic music, that people are listening to or listening over the speakers in the store, and then it becomes the actual soundtrack. I don't get why though. The song doesn't really have much. I mean, I think they might be trying to do an ironic thing. I'm not sure. It doesn't play very well comedically. It doesn't play well for the action scene that follows. It was kind of a groaner. I rolled my eyes. So that's really all I have to say. Oh, and if you thought that okay, so the funniest scene in the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe to this point, whether it be film or television, is the scene from Iron Fist where uh, Daddy Meacham, kills his assistant with the ice cream scooper. That is the funniest scene. I was laughing hysterically for quite some time. I think Scott Buck might have topped that here. There is a scene where Maximus shaves Medusa's hair, and it is hilarious. It is so overdramatic. It is slow motion. It's shot like a rape scene, and when you're trying to evoke that like intense of a subject matter and something that is this, quite frankly, childish in a way that is trying to make you think of those sort of things, it was absurd. I was I was amazed other people in the theater weren't laughing. I was holding back a lot of laughter, and that scene went on and on for a good like minute and a half. It was not a short scene, and I was almost passing out from holding my nose and my mouth, trying not to laugh because it was embarrassing to watch. And furthermore, throughout these two episodes, we have flashbacks. And I guess that scene must have made the greatest hits reel because they're already flashing back to it in the second episode. It was hilarious. From what I understand, there was a subplot cut from these two episodes for this event, and that you will see when you watch the television show on TV. I'm curious what that might be because it might have something to do with Crystal. That would be my guess. She is absent for quite a bit of this. But the way it is, I mean, on a screenplay level, it's relatively tight. Um, I would argue too tight. It isn't sprawling enough as I want an Inhumans show to be, but I'd be interested to see what those subplots are. I'm going to continue watching this. I've seen everything Marvel Cinematic Universe so far, so I'm going to try to stay up to date on this. I think this might be the weakest uh, television show on the ABC stuff. I think it is. In terms of first two episodes of all of the seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., first two episodes of both seasons of Agent Carter, and this is by far the weakest. Oh, and by the way, once Medusa has her head violently shaved, it looks like perfectly groomed Sinead O'Connor hair. That was funny. Well, all right. That's all I have to say about Marvel's IMAX Inhumans. I hope this live stream went okay. I hope you guys can hear me all right. And more than anything, I hope this stream ain't choppy. If it is, I might delete it and make a video later. Um, Anyways, if you've seen this, tell me what you think in the comments below. If you do not watch this, I can't blame you. If you are watching this once it's shown up and you want to get in on it, why don't you comment below? How many people were at your IMAX screening? There was about 20 people there at my theater. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below, and thank you very much for watching. And until next time, see you later.